Welcome to another edition of your Effective Living series on the theme 2023 Starter Pack. This is our fourth and final week where we are focusing on financial foundations for the year. We've spoken about how to get out of debt. We've spoken about how to prioritize your finances for the year. We've spoken about insurance. Today, I want to answer what I consider to be the big question for the year, not just for Ghana, but for the world. Where do we invest our money now? That's the topic I'll be looking at. My guest, he's worked in finance, real estate, and other areas of business for many years, and he will share his personal views on this subject. And of course, Effective Living series will be on our social media platforms. If you watch and you like, please share what you see. My guest is Yaobene Amponsa, and I've known him for many years as a finance expert who also invests in many businesses. But I don't know what he does these days. Yeah, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
How do you describe yourself? What do you do these days?
I'm an entrepreneur.
Okay.
So I try to solve problems.
I like that.
And hopefully people will pay me for it.
You know, in analyzing Ghana's economy, I was asking myself, so where do I invest my money now? Now, I didn't know it was a very big question until I read an article in Bloomberg a week or two ago where they were asking the same question, basically saying the stock markets globally have underperformed, the bond market is in chaos, housing markets are not doing well, and even crypto lost value by 70%. So the question for global financiers was, what's happening? Interest rates are high, inflation is high. So traditional ways of investing for passive income almost have been obliterated. So that's my question. But before we get into answering that, why do you think this year has been so turbulent? In fact, last year, 2022, has been so turbulent. Interest rates are so high. You know, inflation is 55% in Ghana. What is going on?
So, thank you. First of all, from the global point of view, since 2007, there's been cheap money. Mm-hmm. Interest rates have been artificially low for a long time. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the developed economies, the Western economies, haven't really offered people the sort of returns that they want. You look at places like Japan and Switzerland, they've even had negative interest rates. So in chasing yield, especially for the sophisticated investors, they've had to go outside of their comfort zone and come to places like Ghana seeking returns. Now, the thing about cheap money is that effectively, especially in the developed economies, it has an effect on inflation. And in fighting inflation, central banks tend to raise their interest rates. So now, if you're a money manager and you can get acceptable yield in the US, then between Ghana and the US, where would you rather place your money? So we've seen money pulled out of emerging economies and also developing countries back to
traditional safe havens.
Traditional safe havens. So say the US, for example. Now, also recently we all know we suffered a pandemic. And with the difficulties and disruptions to global supply chains, what's happened is that countries that have little capacity to innovate and solve their own problems internally have been exposed for the underdeveloped countries that they are. So places like Ghana, for instance. And what that means is that we are not as productive as we used to be. And so we've all sorts of difficulties, reasons why we are not attractive to the global capital market, and they would rather go to places where things are happening.
So you call it cheap money or easy money?
Yeah.
As against what? Real money or as against hard-earned money?
So it all started with a quantitative easing during the global financial crisis about 15 years ago, where countries like, again, the US, because that's, the dollar is the reserve currency for the world. And in the quantitative easing, they pumped several trillions of dollars into their own economy. And these were funds basically created out of thin air. And that money, because it was used to support the real sector, ended up in people's pockets. Eventually has to go somewhere. Money has to find a home. And so that's what I'm referring to as easy money. But now, so people still have all this money, but in order to protect it, they would rather invest in a place like the US rather than Ghana. So
that's all well and good. When I study your trajectory as an entrepreneur, you worked in finance for a long time, you've done real estate. I get the sense you've never really been a fan of passive income or easy money. Is that true? If it is, why is that? Because I do know that you've set up mutual funds before,
yeah,
and you understand how easy money is made. Yet you've not, at least for the past decade, you've not done any of that. What is it?
It's a more complicated question than you realize, but basically I'm a firm believer that business exists to solve problems.
Okay.
And if you're part of a country and economy that has a lot of problems, then as you deal with it, it also creates opportunity. Right? So yes, could have invested in treasury bills like everybody else, or the stock market, the Ghana Stock Exchange, which I've done in the past. But because I believe that business should solve problems, that's why I focused on areas where I could make a difference. But it's also a little by accident, exposure, because when I was in school, I don't know if we have enough time, but when I was in school, lecturers went on strike for a year. Instead of traveling, there was some uncertainty, so I found a job. They seemed to like me, so they kept me on. So throughout the time I was in school, I was working. And then after school, my boss at the time invited me to work with him in a new company that he had set up. When I joined, there were about 12 of us. I stayed for 10 years. When I was leaving, there were about 600 of us. And,
wow.
And over the 10 years, I saw how people that we worked with made a living, made money, and lifted their entire families out of poverty. A steward who used to work with us and basically kept our premises clean and served food and all of that, because we paid him well, was able to take his children through St. Peter's and attend KNUST.
Wow.
And Legon. One is an engineer, the other is an economist. And
wow.
So
for you, that's real value.
If done well, makes a difference. And I think it's important for us to focus on that.
And sorry if I'm spending a lot of time on this, viewers, but I feel it's important to go through this alley before we get into where do you invest your money now. So I'm thinking about Ghana's economy, and I said on air before that our economy is highly financialized. Yeah. And from a little back of the envelope calculation I did, I mean, countries with much more sophisticated financial centers, the Citi in London, UK, US, they are less financialized than Ghana. And by that I mean, if you take the whole economy, manufacturing is much more significant than just financial services. Is that part of our problem as a country, the fact that we have so many financial instruments, so many financial companies, and yet real value creation is not that high?
You're perfectly right. You're perfectly right. And I love your use of manufacturing because it's a proxy for a company's ability to solve its own problems, right? The thing about sectors like finance and law, for instance, is that they must serve other sectors in order to be useful. Finance really finds a meaning in financing the real economy, those who are doing stuff, those who are building stuff, right? Because the essence of finance, and for someone who studies finance and economics, The basic reason why the financial services sector exists is intermediation. Someone has excess money, someone needs money, you match them efficiently at a good price, right? One that's affordable to the one who needs it, which is the interest rate, and acceptable to the one who has the excess money. Okay.
That's the basic function of finance.
That's the basic function of finance, and to help people protect their wealth. But as you know, people respond to incentives. And in Ghana, we sort of perverted it to finance basically chasing easy returns instead of solving problems.
Wow.
So we are in a situation where our own capital has no appetite, has no incentive to solve our problems. So whenever everybody knows, when you're doing any meaningful project, you need to go and find money abroad, right? Because Ghanaian banks won't finance it. Now, when you go abroad, the bank or the private equity fund or whoever is giving you money is probably funded by their pensions. So the South African equivalent of SNIT, for instance, the Public Investment Corporation, PIC, has funded a lot of infrastructure, even here in Ghana and across Africa, but particularly in their own country. In Ghana, our pension funds hold nearly 80% of their value in government securities.
By law.
Right? No,
some of it is by law now.
Some of it, but I think they also unfairly blame the regulator for two reasons. One is, even if it was by law, whenever it's in their interest, they go and lobby the regulator. So why haven't they lobbied the regulator to change it? In fairness, they've done quite a bit of it now. I think the money they could put into private projects has gone up from 5% to 15%. You know, so we are seeing changes, and those changes will likely be accelerated by the current problems that we have.
Wow. Let me summarize so far. This is the Effective Living series, and we're talking to Albert Amponsa. He's a financial guy, but he's into entrepreneurship, real estate, and other things. And my question for this morning, which I believe the question for the season, is where do you invest your money now? There's a debt exchange program. People have lost confidence in bonds. Stock market is not doing well. If you check the GSE All Share Index, compare their 2022 December to previous years, almost everything is down. Housing markets are not doing that well. If you look at the proxy for that, even cement purchases is coming down. So we're talking about the end, or at least a temporary cessation of easy money. Now, how do you invest in real things? And in our last segment of the show, we'll talk about some real things. He has 4 areas he wants us to invest in, but we're still building the foundation. So the over-financialization is also a problem. So these are all structural issues. But don't forget, this is a personal finance conversation.
Yes.
All right. So how do you... So what should you think about an economy like this? Because you're in an economy that is going through a financial upheaval. Inflation is over 50%. The banks are not really lending. I analyzed some banks. A lot of them, their interest income is from financial instruments. So you are right. So what do people with excess money, or people who have saved enough to invest, how should they think about storing up that money or letting that money work?
Okay. So, but just a little step back and then we'll go forward. The link between personal finance and the structural issues is that what you're comfortable with personally is most likely what you're going to, if you're a regulator, for instance, you're going to stipulate in your regulations. A regulator who holds 100% of his own wealth in treasury bonds is unlikely to understand why someone wants to invest in infrastructure. So that is the link.
That's a very big hint.
Yeah, that is the link, right? But that aside, so...
Wow. This is a very powerful one. I think you are giving me a clue as to what to discuss later on radio. Because a regulator who stores majority of his wealth in treasury bonds is not likely to understand why people must invest in real things. Because most of their money is made from just interest.
Yes.
Wow.
So
that's deep.
We're all products of our experiences.
That's deep.
If you've never invested in a business and you keep hearing business is risky, and now you're put in a situation where you determine where people invest. You know, it's a steep learning curve, and most probably by the time you get there, you're a bit old. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, so you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
having said this,
yeah,
clearly, somebody like you who's not really a fan of too much passive income will not be as affected as people who have been just buying and selling money. So obviously, you are more diversified, and you are also more real than I'm talking about real money than just paper value.
That's partially correct.
Okay.
Because whatever a person is into, whatever business a person is into, your customers likely depend on their disposable income, which is now locked up somewhere. So the effect may not be direct, but the indirect effect may end up, much the same as if it was direct. But in terms of thinking about how to invest, when times are tough, the difficulty makes people, and all people, whether it's employees, when a company is going through tough times, you find that the employees behave better. They are more prompt to work because they know the company is suffering. And even if it's not an altruistic behavior to help the company to exit the tough times, they are afraid that if they have to go home, they
have nothing to talk.
They put on their best
they come to work earlier.
They come to
and
work
they sit down looking very happy.
So that's just to say that when times are tough, people generally make better decisions than when times are easy.
I like that.
Right? Because there's little room for error. Okay. And in people making better decisions, it throws up all sorts of opportunities. So when in terms of investment, I would say that this is the best time to look out for opportunities, right? Because your potential partner in the business who will bring some skill, or your potential customer or your potential supplier are all thinking hard about how to survive and make more dispassionate. So, for instance, this may not be a realistic example, but imagine that you were trying to set up a bank or a lending institution, a microfinance, whatever. Because of the tough times that we've been through, there are lots of bankers looking to do something, and they are more likely to be reasonable in what they ask for in exchange for either teaming up with you or supplying their labor. So the first thing is, what opportunities do you see? Now, the thing about opportunities is that it's not everything you see that's prospective. You know, there's a famous saying by a professor that you may see a gap in the market, but is there a market in the gap? Right? Is this something that people pay you for? Okay, and you need to make good decisions, and you need to be realistic about that. But the key thing to bear in mind when considering any opportunity is, are you solving a problem? Okay, that's especially if you're investing in a business.
Okay,
are you solving a problem? Because the only thing that does not lie is cash. In business, you can fiddle your numbers and show a profit, whatever, but with cash, people only hand it over for value, and someone will give you cash only if you've solved a problem or you have the capacity to solve a problem for that person. So if you're thinking
the test of the health of a business is cash.
It's cash flow, right? not so much profit, it's cash flow. Now, if you're going to invest in a business, then what problem, what real problem is that business solving? What will people pay you for? As a mentor of mine used to tell me when I was a young man, be careful what you are known for, because that's what people will pay you for, right? So what real problem are you solving? But business is not the only thing that people can invest in.
Okay.
And in terms of risk appetite, because again, it's not everyone who has the aptitude to be an entrepreneur. Okay, and it's perfectly fine for someone to be just an employee, a very good employee serving his employer and doing well, because that business is also solving a problem, whether you own it or not. But if you don't have that risk appetite, and for you like being an employee every month, the till rings, crane, your salary is landed, whatever, you can still invest by investing in yourself.
Let's pause there. I'll come to that as the final aspect. We're talking Effective Living series, and the question is, where do you invest your money now in the face of the economic upheaval we're facing globally and particularly in Ghana? So my guest, Yabena Ponsa, says, obviously, businesses are key. They create real value. So you can invest in a business, but it starts off by saying invest in yourself. So elaborate on that a bit before we continue. So the first place to look is to invest in yourself in times like these.
In times
How do you do
like
that?
this. So it is well known that in the US, for instance, business school admissions rise when they have a downturn in the economy.
It's true.
So when people are laid off with their little savings, instead of staying home, they say, let me go to school. Let me acquire a new skill, a new competency, so that by the time the economy picks up and they're looking for people to come and work, hey, I have this additional skill and I'm more competitive than the other person who also wants the same job. But even if you're not an employee, everybody, continuous learning is important. In fact, just yesterday, I have signed up for a 6-week course online with Oxford.
With all the things you know, you are still going to school. Wow.
So it's important.
So invest in yourself as a starting point.
Invest in yourself as a starting point.
And of course, investments in education. I think we were saying on air some time back that if your plan is for 100 years, educate a child, as against 10 years, plant a tree. So money spent on self-development or knowledge acquisition is never money wasted.
No, it is not wasted.
But apart from investing in yourself, where else can you invest in times like these?
What I'm going to say is a bit controversial, and I left home.
It will not be the only thing controversial you've said today. So you go ahead.
I left home with strict instructions from my domestic managing director not to say anything controversial. Yeah. But again, if you have a bit more risk appetite, specifically in the Ghanaian context, I would say hold Forex.
Hold Forex. Hold
USD, right? People will say, hey, it's not patriotic.
Yeah.
All right. But you are an economist, you know the background to currency, right? Before, currency was basically gold. And then paper money, which was backed by gold. So if you held 10 units of the paper money, it meant you were entitled to a certain amount of gold sitting somewhere. And then all the countries in the world went off the gold standard in the 70s to what we call fiat money.
Fiat money.
Fiat money, the government says it is currency because
I say so.
I say so.
And America can just jack up the numbers to increase the money. But when you do it in Ghana, they say you are creating inflation, so you can't do it.
You know, but and fiat money is backed by the entire strength of the economy.
Yes.
But if you're asking me to hold my wealth, and money serves a number of, apart from being a medium of exchange, it holds value, it protects your wealth, right? And if you're asking me to hold my wealth in cedis, meanwhile, you, the same government that you issue the currency that you say I should hold, You are doing everything possible to undermine the currency.
And you are buying things in dollars.
And you're buying things in dollars, and you're paying people in dollars, and you're charging your fees in dollars, all of that. Then why should it be the burden of the individual Ghanaian to protect the currency? When the one who owns the currency, who issued it, because the currency is just a promissory note.
Let me ask you a question on that point. I was talking to somebody and I said, if you had bought Forex since Kufuor did during the nomination and kept your money in, say, USD, and versus buying into some collective investment scheme, would you have been better off? And the person was like, no, it would have been better to invest in these things. But if you consider how the Citi has fallen compared to the dollar in the past 20 years. Have you done 15. Have you done the numbers and compared that to inflation? Would you have been better off if you had bought foreign FX?
So let's say not to today, right? Let's take 14, 15-year period. So from 2007. In 2007, the Citi, the $1 was worth 95 pesos, right? It wasn't even 1 to 1. So it was worth 95 pesos. As at, say, a year ago, let's take out the aberration that's the last 12 months. A year ago, the Citi was about 6.95, right? Now, that, by my calculation, is annualized 17% depreciation of the Citi every year for 14 years, Jesus right? Christ. 17% annualized. In real terms, it goes up and down, but if you annualize it, what we call compounded annual growth rate. So if you had some money and you invested in US dollars in 2007, up to January of last year, your return in Citi terms is 17%.
Wow.
Average inflation over the period is just under 12%. So that's a real return of over 5%, right? Yes, it is not as good as treasury bills or
any of these things.
But you have control over your money. It's in your account. It's yours. There's no haircut or anything. It's yours, right? With a positive return.
Wow.
Okay. And so why not?
So
so if you have money, right? You've got. I have a friend of mine, Ali Nacha, who I call Ali Alphabet. You have too many degrees, right? So your alphabet can fill 2 or 3 lines after your name. You don't need to go to school again. That's all well and good. But you also don't want to invest in any business, or you want liquidity, right? You prefer. So I would say, FX. If it's possible, buy FX and just keep it.
Okay. Wow. This, you were warned not to say anything controversial. but I guess you're right, because a lot of people were even doing this. Okay, but we probably have a show to discuss this later on. So somebody said somewhere that I heard that a country's exchange rate or currency value is like its share price. I think you said this to me in the past.
Yeah.
In the context of what you're saying, you're basically saying that if we don't run our economy well and protect it, our currency's value will go down. And it takes more than moral suasion for people to invest in CDs. It's a rational decision. Yeah. So if you want people to invest in CDs, the CD has to be strong.
Yes.
It's not an emotional thing.
It's not an emotional thing, because people work really hard for their money, especially in a country like Ghana, right, where there's no free money. People work really hard for their money. So in protecting the value that they've created, it shouldn't be just about, think of the country. What is the country thinking?
But let me ask you, do our collective actions not contribute? So for example, if we all speculatively converted our cities to buy dollars, it would worsen the exchange rate.
So you're speaking to someone who thinks that, I think, that, and remember, I'm not just talking about this government, all governments.
Yes, of course.
We haven't shown enough maturity to manage a currency. So, you know what? More than 50% of our problems will be solved if we ditch the Citi and we just spent US dollars instead.
Are you talking about now or in future?
Now.
You're serious?
No, but, well, I'm not a soothsayer. I'm not a prophet, so I can't talk about the future necessarily.
Wow.
But now, so our history up to now. So if your currency is losing 90% of its value against another currency, right? What does that say? What does that say?
Wow.
So it is not a trivial matter. It's not about people saying, oh, you know, let's be patriotic. And patriotism on an empty stomach means nothing.
Wow.
So we either, and intentions are important. If we're all doing our best, that's fine. But if while you are doing your best, you know, those who have even greater responsibility than yourself are, you know, creating a rentier state.
What's the point?
What's the point?
Wow. So word to the wise is enough. Within what is permitted by law, you take his advice. What about property?
Nothing illegal.
Of course not. Of course, what you're saying is is very.
Let me, and just to buttress it, let's say your cousin lives in the US, comes down for Christmas, right? And he brought $5,000 to spend and chill. So he needs CDs.
You can give
and you have CDs and you have some 50,000 saved. You say, hey, exchange rate of 10.
So I'll use my CDs to pay for whatever you are doing. So let me give you my
CDs and take the dollars and let me put it in my bank account. So that's what I mean.
Not speculatively going to buy dollars.
No, not to say, but when there's an opportunity like that,
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
You do real estate.
Yes.
I use the cement figure because I didn't really have a proper measure of the property market. And indeed, our property market is a bit weird. I think in some extent it's overinflated. Some of the properties are too expensive. Some of the amounts of money houses in cantonments are going for don't make sense anywhere. And I feel some of it is because of washing of money and the influence of other countries. But I don't want to go there. So what I'm saying is I don't have the facts to say where the housing market is. But when I looked at 2022 September 2022, I saw cement sales was coming down. So that tells me that construction at least is not going up. So I'm using that as a proxy to say housing may not be doing as well as we think, because anecdotally you can say, oh, I see people building houses at Nigerian. But cement sales is a very good proxy for how quickly people are putting up new projects, right? Now, talk to me about real estate and what to think about if you feel your money should go into real estate.
I think it's a good area to invest. It's not as lucrative as people generally think. They think you do one project, you double your money. No. If you're able to make, and real estate is generally denominated in dollars in Ghana, or indexed.
That's a different problem, right? We have to discuss.
It's indexed. But if you make anything, you do a project which may take maybe 2 years, and you make anything around 20%, you've done very well. So on an annualized basis, all you really made is about 11%, okay, as a developer. Okay, it's possible to do more. I'm talking about average, right? Now, the thing about real estate, the reason it slowed down in terms of construction, because as you said, there was very little credit to begin with. Now there's zero credit. Okay, people used their recurrent income to fund building slowly. Now incomes are threatened. So if you're not too sure of what you're getting tomorrow, what you get today, you hold on to it a bit longer, right? The house can wait. It's not going anywhere, right? So the individuals and mom and pop, small developers here and there, things have slowed down. And also, even if you're a large developer, demand has slowed down as well, a little, okay, in certain segments, and I'll go into that. So you build slower, because it's not like
they're not buying as quickly.
Or those who are buying are paying in bits and pieces. So things slow down generally. But you know, and in every industry, there's some illegality happening. So in terms of laundering money and all, they happen, I think, you know. But a lot of the development, okay, is just people genuinely who either need a place to live or using it as a store of value. Okay, instead of holding cash in my account, let me go and buy a few bags of cement. Let me get the masons. Okay, build this wall and this wall, and let's rest. Next time we'll build this wall. So it's a store of value. So if you see empty properties, it's not that people had money that more money than sense. No, but
they feel it's a good place to save you because the house will only go up.
I say to people, I don't like businesses that move about, so I won't invest in transport. You don't know where the
you want the business to stay.
Right? But you build a house, you go away 10 years, you come back, it's still where you left it. So there is that assurance. But if you have the money to buy, okay, just know that in the lower segments of the market, there's still quite strong demand, okay? And I'm talking about maybe houses up to about $100,000, which is still a lot of money, but within the context of the real estate, that's towards the
there's demand there.
There's demand there, okay? People want to, maybe slightly longer payment terms, but there's demand. Now, what do you do with it once you've bought it? Generally, among professionals, there's some segmentation. It's not very strict. Okay, so places like Alajo, so if you rent it out, you may get maybe a 3 to 5% yield. Tesano, Jolu, Abelinkpe, East Legon, you may get 5 to 7% rental yield. And then the tier 1 areas,
airport, Labone, cantonments,
you may get between 8.5% and 11% yield. And if you're lucky to get a good tenant, then that's rental, the sort of thing. Yeah. So yeah.
And does that include Airbnb? That's a different business.
Airbnb is more of a hospitality thing, but it's picking up because of the sector that's booming in Ghana now is tourism.
Yes. So
Airbnb is also picking up, but it's a more active sort of manager.
So with all of this, trying to understand. So of course, in investing in a business, finally, are you talking debt or equity? If I have money, I want to invest in a business. What are you advising? It's
either. Right?
Okay.
Usually, if you're not too sure about the person running the business, if it's not a business that you're going to run yourself,
lend them the money and take your money back.
You lend the money and have it secured against something.
Fantastic.
If you trust the person and you clearly understand what the business is set up to do, then equity is better. And remember, when you invest in equity, for me, there are a number of things that, one, you need to understand what problem the business is solving. But also, in this modern world, ask yourself, is it scalable? If you're investing in a business that requires people to walk the street, then scaling it becomes a bit difficult, right? But these days, platforms are popular, so tech, all of those things. But also, does the business have the opportunity? Is it exportable? Okay, does it have a service?
It's not like a limited scope.
Yes, in terms of geography. Is there a service that you could export to another country and earn hard currency for it?
This has been fascinating. We could talk for a whole hour, but I can't pay you for your time. So I'll leave it here and hopefully lure you to come back on air at some point when your domestic CEO allows. After what you've done today. I don't know what. Please forgive me. I know who she is. Please don't hold it against me. We are just trying to help Ghanaians and we have been as candid as possible. My guest has been Yabeni Amponsa, who's been really insightful in helping us address, I think, the most important question of our time. Where do you invest your money now? So this has actually been a bonus topic which I added to the list. And we got the topic in the course of the program because we realized that even in the discussion on finance, there was an important question we were not answering. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next year with hopefully a more prosperous economic story to tell. My name is Bernard Avle. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.